Hello again, guys. Welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, there's over 100 videos to go at, lots to learn, lots of different techniques. If you're returning, then welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some really simple little drawings of cups. We're going to be doing 4 different cups, 4 different ways. Super simple, super loose, super fun. So enjoy. Right, so I'm going to sort of eyeball up the top. I'm going to put a little bit more perspective in the bottom because that can be a little bit rounder than the top because there is a bit of perspective in it. Where the handle actually meets the cup, I'm going to draw the sort of interface. There is some obviously vertical lines. Now, so I know that this bit goes to there. I'm looking at the cup. I'm looking at where all these lines kind of intersect. And now that comes up there like that. Right, so that's a cup, as simple as that. Now, if I wanted to, I could add in some more line thickness, and this might just help sort of tell that story. So I can use the big, thick Fude pen. Here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm using it just to really pull out those big old lines that help just tell the story a little bit there. So that's pretty cool. Right, so what about a little continuous line version? Let's do that. So I'm going to do a slightly more looking down version here. I'm holding the pen right at the back, and I'm not worried about that splot on the paper. And I'm going to just, there's a little flare on the bottom of this one. So I'm going to put a bit of a flare on. Now I'm looking down more on that. So there we go, a nice little continuous line mug. Now for the next one, what I'm going to do is some very minimal line work for this one. So this should be fun. What I might do again is I might use my food pen here, and I'm going to just do that. I'm going to do that, and that. That's about as minimal as you can get, isn't it? So for this one, I'll just do a straight on picture of a mug. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little perspective in the top, a little curve in the top, and a little curve in the bottom. Now the reason why I'm going to do that is just to try and show you that it's not just a square. So how is that going to look? Well, it's going to look like a little bit of curve in the top, a little bit of curve in the bottom, and then we're going to have this handle running up and around and back there into the mug. And again, I'm holding the pen right at the back here, just doing some real quick sketches. There you go. So let's slap some paint on these. So one thing it's important to do when you're doing these quick sketches is to remember to just sort of hair dry this. I'll let it dry naturally, because you will find, particularly if you're using a food pen, it lays down a big blob of ink. Because it's not dry, it will still bleed. Now, what I'm going to try and do is there's a beautiful sort of mottled finish to this cup. So I'm going to try and vaguely replicate that on there. So I'm going to start by just applying a little bit of that. I'm going to leave a little gap at the top. Now I might drop a little bit of blue in there. Why not? Maybe a bit more of the green. Just try and keep it quite lively. A bit more blue from the palette gunk. Here, just under there. And also because obviously maybe just a bit more shadow here. Right, and then this handle, which has actually got a little bit of brown in it. If you sort of look there, there's the glaze has got a tiny bit more brown in, so I might select some of this burnt umber and just try and run a bit of that through it. There we go. Now you don't want to work the watercolour too much, because what you'll find is if you do too much work on the watercolour, if you go you're leaving out all the colours and it'll lose a bit of its life. Now because this has a few sort of spatters and some interesting texture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit of that burnt umber and I'm just going to mix, and then I'm going to spatter a little bit of that on here, particularly down in this corner here, like that. Right. So that kind of captures a little bit of the feel for that. Obviously, I'm not doing any of the details at the top. Now, there's going to be some shadow under here as well, don't forget. If the cup's on a table, if you want it to... I often think that unless you put a little bit of shadow on things, what can happen is they look like they're floating. So if you put a little bit of shadow underneath an object that you're painting, you know, if it's sitting on a table, it suggests it's sat at a table. It's a little daft thing, but I don't know. I think it's quite nice. Personal preference. There you go. Now, if you think it's a bit too strong, it's a bit too close to the colour of the cup, you can use tissue. Just pull it out. You see how effective that is? Just pull a little bit of that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some blue. And I'm going to go back in. And I'm just going to add it in as blue. As I prefer that. There we go. So the inside of the cup, obviously this is a cream sort of glaze. So you could mix up a little bit of very, very pale colour. Now I think why it's kind of worth doing that is because you can see how the white all the way around the edge there really stands out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of this yellow ochre and I'm going to find some of my palette goo and just get some slightly, knock the edge off that with some of the palette glue. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to go around the top. I'm going to leave a line to suggest a reflection or reflective surface. And I'm going to go around there again. There you go. So there's my cup. Right, so for the second one, you could do something, should we do something a little bit looser? Now for that, if you want to be loose, sometimes it's nice to use a bigger brush, something that's got a little bit more capacity to it, because that last brush was a little bit lightweight. So what I'm going to choose here is I'm going to choose a mini mop brush, one of my favourite brushes. So what colours should we use for this? Should we do something a bit brighter? Why not? Let's do a cup with a stripe on it. So I'm going to choose some of this yellow here. Let's put that across so you can see what I'm doing. It's nice bright yellow, and I'm going to put a stripe around there. And maybe a stripe around the top. Have a red handle. And then maybe a blue base. Like that. Now, say for example you wanted to do again a little bit of shadow, you can take a little bit of that blue and some palette stuff there and just scratch something across like that. And then if you wanted to, you could add a tiny bit of shadow inside like that. There you go. It's not a lot of paint marks on that, but you know, you don't actually need a lot. So let's go to the next one. So this is a very minimal, a really, really minimal approach. Now the reason why I've done this is because I'm going to start with the background. Now you'll see what I mean. If I was to get some of this really bright ultramarine here, and this is a really poppy colour. So I'm going to start by just defining some negative space. No, I don't want it there, because that's where the top of the handle is. So again, use some tissue, pull that out. I'll put a few spatters, make it nice and loose. And of course, one of the important bits is there, because that helps to define that handle. So again, I'm picking up a bit more pigment. See, I've done it again. I keep saying, this is how you pull the... Oh dear. And then let's say we've got some, that this is sitting on a bit of a sort of wooden table. So we'll put some slightly earthier tones down here. And again, I'm just going to put those together, and they don't have to be anything fancy. Sort of a white cup on a simple table. Again, I'm going to get some of this general palette goo. We're going to put a little bit of shadow in here. A little bit of shadow under there. And behind like that. There we go. So that one really, it's more about negative space in a way. You could have done all that really just with watercolour. You could have done it all without that hard line, but I put that hard line in there just to show that really you don't need many lines to make a cup, if you know what I mean. So for the last one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a relatively strong wash of ultramarine, and I'm going to do a relatively even. See, it's a very wet, I'm using a very wet mix, and I'm going to go down, create a nice even wash. Now if I tilt the pad up a little bit here, a bit more water on there, what I can do is I can keep that wet bead running all the way down. Get a nice even spread of paint there like that. There you go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do some back runs in there. So I'll show you what that means. So if I just put a couple of drops of water in there, you'll see what happens. So we'll put one in here, one there. Yeah, some dabs of water in there. And we'll let that just spread out for a bit. And then again, I'm going to get a little bit of this darker mix that's in here, and I'll just put a little suggestion of a shadow. Then I'll let that dry and we can have a look at those. So the little blue cup that I put those back runs in to create sort of cauliflowers hasn't really worked so well, because I've actually hair dried it, and what that's done is it's moved it around, so you've lost the crisp edges. But it's fine, I like it as it is. But before I just show you the rest, I want to just show you something else. Now, if you want to do a reflection on something like a cup, if you wet an area, now you can have, this can be something that's dried years ago. It doesn't even have to be something that's just been done. You know, you can reactivate watercolour a long time after you've put it down. So if I just wet that area, go over it just a couple of times. That's it like that. Now I get some tissue and just hold it down on there. you see you can actually lift off paint. Now, different paint will have different staining characteristics. So some paints stain more than others. So you might find that some colours you can lift off more than others. So say, for example, if you did that, and then I've got a chalk pen here, and then used a chalk pen, and you can just create some, you know, some little detail bits. There you go. That says gloss a bit more, doesn't it? There's another little technique. Okay, so this was worked really well. You can see there's some quite impressive backgrounds actually just in there, just because I've been whacking it on. And again, the same with that. If you wanted to create some, you know, break up some of those lines, you can, with something like a chalk pen, you can actually cover them up. Sort of, in some ways, it's nice at that actually. It takes away a little bit of that harshness. Oh, chalk pen's running. They do that. They're really badly behaved, these. You see that big blob there? Anyway, there you go. And then we're back to these two. That's really fun. I like that. It's a really nice little fun daft sketch. And again here with this, I might be tempted just to put a little, see, that's left a little naughty bit there like that. And again a little dot like that. Maybe even just a little line there. There we go. Oh, there as well. That is going to be in line with that. So there we go, just a couple of finishing touches. So I hope you like my cups. It just goes to show that something as incredibly simple as a cup, you know, and I'm from Yorkshire, so I do say cup, not a cap. It's not something you put on your head. Something as simple as a cup, not only you can draw it many ways, you can sit and just sketch it, but also we can teach you a little bit about how we construct drawings and the way that, you know, the way that the world works around us. You know, a straight line is just an ellipse on its side, and a circle is a straight on ellipse, if that makes sense. So yeah, you can see how that changes. As I said before, from a circle, it becomes a straight line, and then as you go further around, that ratio changes. And that's how we draw these things. And also in this one, finally, I just want to say, by putting a tiny suggestion of a curve in the top and a tiny suggestion of a curve in the bottom, you're helping the viewer say, this is kind of a bit of a hint of what it's like. Whereas if you just draw a square, and it's cool, and like if you're a kid, that's how you'd very, very much draw a cup, and of course you can do that too, and it looks great. But what I'm sort of trying to say is that by sort of suggesting a form, it sort of helps the viewer understand it, if you know what I mean. I'm ranting now anyway. So I do hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. There's something wonderful about having a sketchbook full of these little simple, joyful little sketches. It makes me very happy. And we'll be doing plenty more of this in future. Do message me if there's anything you want to know specifically about this tutorial, or just anything in general. And bearing in mind that there's some longer form content on my Patreon. And yeah, like and subscribe. Cool. Cheers. Bye.